All right, hello YouTube, it's Os with ASM Auto. Wanted to give you guys an update on the YJ. Basically, it's done. So I'm gonna give you a tour of everything that I did to it, and then as soon as this video's over, I'm gonna put the wheels on and I'm gonna take it for a test drive. And on Monday, I'm gonna inspect it. And I know it's gonna pass because I know the guy that did the work on it, and he did really good work. All right, first up, as you guys know, I removed all the rust off of the frame and basically anywhere I could find it. And I pour 15'd, I used the etcher and also basically it's like a primer to prepare for another coat, the top coat of Rust-Oleum. And I went with flat black. Here's the frame. Got some brake fluid on it. Didn't eat through the paint, so I don't know if I'll touch that up or not. Obviously, I have to do the areas that are blocked by the lift as soon as I get it on the ground before I take it for its road test. Ooh, knocked the paint off there. I'll have to replace that. And it actually turned out really well. So I used an angle grinder, Milwaukee angle grinder, and in the previous video I mentioned that I was using grinding discs and going through them kind of quickly. So I switched to a rigid grinding wheel, which is supposed to have 100 times the life of a grinding disc, and it's supposed to work twice as fast. Well, I don't know about the 100 times life, we'll see. All I know is it doesn't look like it's really been used, but it works about 4 times as fast as a grinding disc, the rigid grinding wheel. I'll put a part number, I'll add a part number to this video. Again, you can see it in the previous video. All right, so yeah, basically as you can see, I pretty much got everything. That's just glare. It's actually black. All right, so next up, you saw in another video that I replaced the the rear axle pinion seal, and I also bought a tool to basically torque this, and then to torque this to spec. And that tool worked really well. You can see that in the previous video. It doesn't have a part number. It was off of Amazon. It's made by a small American manufacturing company. But anyway, it's a flange that basically goes on here, and it has a breaker bar attachment, also a pipe, cheater pipe attachment, ratchet, etc. It's got a 1/2-inch attachment, also 3/4, so it accommodates either one, and it worked extremely well. It fits all kinds of different vehicle yokes, so you basically attach it here and here. Didn't do any damage to the threads, worked perfectly. Now granted, trying to torque something to like 200 foot-pounds where you've got a breaker bar in one hand and a torque wrench in the other isn't the most precise thing. I ended up getting it pretty close. I was at 5.81 foot-pounds of rotational, of resistance basically. And you should be at least, should be around 5 foot-pounds. So I think that'll be totally fine. But anyway, I guess if you're gonna do this, I would recommend maybe bracing, like a cheater pipe or something against the frame itself. And that would make it a lot easier to hit like that precise torque number. But I'm pretty pleased with the results. So next up, I replaced the exhaust with a brand new Walker, and this is all, this is basically factory correct, but a brand new stainless steel Walker exhaust. And I got both the muffler, there you can see, there's the muffler, and the pipe from Napa. They hooked me up. Obviously I pay wholesale pricing because I'm an auto repair shop. So I got a really good deal, but this is probably what I should have put on originally. If I did, I wouldn't have had to replace it. What I put on there was pretty crappy. But lesson learned. So next up, I redid the brake line from here, right there, all the way. Let's see if you can see it. It's this right here. You know, as you can see, there's a union all the way back to the front where it was not corroded. And let's see it on the other side. As you can see, there's the other side there. I pretty much followed the original path. One thing that really helped me with this is I borrowed a mini tube bender from my colleague Joe, which worked extremely well. And this mini tube bender you can actually find at Harbor Freight. They offer the exact same thing. It's branded Pittsburgh, has a lifetime warranty. Thing worked phenomenal. I think if they put their tubing benders in the in the auto repair section, they'd sell a lot more of them. This thing was like in the back near like the bottle jacks or something. But man, like, I don't know how many brake lines you guys do, but you know, if you use a regular tubing benders, a lot of times if you're doing a repair on the vehicle, you just can't fit it anywhere. But this mini tubing bender was just perfect. So especially for this 3/16 brake line. Now granted, it's the nickel copper stuff. It's not super hard to bend, but I wanted it to look factory. So that was very helpful in doing that. Also, you can see I accidentally cut into this electrical line right here when I was grinding, I think. That's probably what happened. But I basically, it wasn't that big of a deal because I actually needed to extend this line anyway. So I just, you know, soldered on some extensions and then cut off some of the that plastic protective sleeve from from a sacrificial wiring harness, and then duct taped it all up, or not duct tape. I'm tired. Electrical taped it all up, and put that basically back where it originally was. Had to replace the fuel filter, upgraded the worm gear clamps to fuel filter correct ones. Not sure if the ones that were on there were original, but these are nicer anyway. Let's see, what else did I do? Yeah, another thing I discovered was there's an Evap line here. I've actually replaced most of that. As you can see, there's rubber hosing. It changes to metal, to rubber, and then basically metal, so it'll snap into these little guides. And then actually from here on, you can see there's the rubber. From here on, it was still good. But what I discovered was it was actually, there's the union for the brake line, the other union. And what I actually discovered is this line, see this line up here, it's got some paint on it because it didn't come off. Goes to this here, and what I discovered was that the connection to the charcoal canister was actually broken, so it was just kind of hanging loose in there, and I had never noticed that before. The other two connections were intact, but I'll show you what I did. Yeah, see, it's kind of hard to focus. Let me see if I can get this out of the way. Yeah, do you see that right there? There's the charcoal canister, and there's the connection that was actually completely broken off along with that section of pipe. So what I did is I just got a nipple and I Q-bonded it back on there because everything else seems to be fine. So I got the Evap working again. Now again, because this is over 25 years old, it doesn't have to pass emissions in the state of Pennsylvania, but I figured, hey, it's a part of the vehicle, might as well have it working. And lastly, you probably can't see it very well. Let's see if I can get this to focus. But this right here, I had to replace the bracket, for basically the rear. All right, another thing I had to do is this is an exhaust hanger bracket back here, and it's right near the tailpipe. I kind of think it's cool that this tailpipe has the downturn, just like the old school, the original tailpipe did. But anyway, so I had to replace that bracket, and thank God it wasn't welded on. It was just bolted on with 2 bolts. Now, granted, reaching those 2 bolts without dropping the fuel tank wasn't the most fun proposition, but I pulled it off. And what's kind of weird is so this is the outer hanger. And I found this, I think it was on eBay, but it's a Mopar original part. That's not that hard to find. In fact, I think you can still get it from Daimler Chrysler, or at least I should, not Daimler Chrysler anymore, but basically from Dodge dealerships, I think. But what's weird is, as you can see, it actually mates to an inner hanger piece, and that you can't find anywhere unless you go to a junkyard. So fortunately mine was in pretty good shape, and of course I Rust-Oleum'd to that as well. So I've got the hanger back in place. Oh, and one of the most important things, I replaced the rear shock mounts. That was kind of the impetus for, you know, this overall service. Granted, I found out how poor of condition the tailpipe was, but I already knew I had to replace these, you know, these upper shock mounts. And so basically, you know, what you can do if you have a Jeep Wrangler like this, you know, in this case it's a YJ 1994, is there's a company called Safety Cap, and they make these sections of frame that you can just weld right on, and then you can weld their upper shock mount right on top of this section of frame. And when you're done, it basically is the same height, pretty much the same orientation as the factory original, and it's basically corrects the issues with the original, because this thing is going to last as long as this Jeep does. So yeah, there's the new upper shock mount on that side, and there's the new one on this side. Now the only thing it's missing is the old one used to have a thing that this would snap into, but these aren't, you know, they're pretty solid. I zip tied the Evap Line because that used to be a piece of pipe that fit into this. Instead I just zip tied it where it would run anyway. But yeah, so that thing's just kind of like hanging out right now. I don't know if I'll maybe mount something to the you know, to the shock mount, or if I'll just leave it. I think it'll be fine the way it is. Yeah, so that was that. This is welded all the way around. You don't necessarily have to do that. It's just why not. And then also there was a little gap in there that was also filled in with weld. Yeah, so there you have it. The YJ's done, and trying to look at the camera here straight. The YJ's done and ready to roll. You know, talking about it now, it seems like I didn't do that much, but in reality, it was a shitload of work, especially getting all the rust off, you know, and then having to weld the upper shock mounts, routing all that stuff. Like, I had to do quite a bit of soldering on that electrical line, you know, to make it the length that I needed it to be. But man, just removing all the rust, then pour 15ing it. What I did is, so I ground off most of the rust. Then I went around with like a scraper and just scraped anything that was loose. I basically hit the entire underside with air, got all the loose particles off. Then I hit it with the pour 15. I let that soak in for 30 minutes. Then I hit the entire everything underneath with water, because that's what they recommend. Then I air dried all of that, waited a day, and came back and Rust-Oleum'd it. It took me 6 hours to cover the entire bottom, and I think 5 spray paint cans. So yeah, this has been kind of like an odyssey. Actually, to tell you the truth, it's been sitting on this lift since I made that last video talking about it. Oh yeah, grinding those, grinding the areas where the upper shock mounts had to go flat was a bit of a chore too. But yeah, so it's basically been sitting here since that video. And then over the last 7 or 8 days, I've put in several good hours a day on this thing just to get it done. I realized it was finally time to get it out of the shop, free up this lift. And I hope you have a great weekend. I have a little gander at the 4.0, the legendary 4.0. You gotta love these Jeeps. This 1994 Wrangler was one of the last ones to roll off out of the factory, the original Willys plant in Michigan. Little factoid there. They actually went away from that plant and they came back to it for a couple of years. And this just happened to be one of the years where they went back to that plant. So again, this is the Sahara edition. It originally was a park ranger vehicle, and yeah, it's still got it's got some patina. I may get to that eventually. Also, at some point, it's going to need the transmission rebuild. A couple of gears are a little tricky, but I know how to drive it. It's like you get used to a vehicle, it's like the back of your hand. But yeah, this was a park ranger vehicle for a couple of years. Then a chef owned it for like 20 years and took amazing care of it. I actually had it shipped here from Wyoming. so they don't have rust out there. That's why basically the frame's in great shape. The only reason it really has any issues, or had any issues, is because it sat in a very humid environment for a few years. I was using it, but just it was parked outside and it was a very humid area. So it kind of took a lot of abuse over the course of a few years, and that's basically what I've corrected for the long haul here. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this video. Oh, yeah, that's another thing. I just feel like talking about random things. Those are actually my tires. They're gonna go on the Grand Cherokee, which is right here. This thing's pretty cool too. It's a 2004 2004 Grand Cherokee with, it's got the high output V8 in it, and it also has quadra drive, which is full-time all-wheel drive, but you can actually drop it into 4 low, which locks the rear axle, because it's got it's got differentials on the front and rear, and it can actually lock the the axle solid, so you get basically like true 4-wheel drive in 4 low, and the rest of the time you basically have all-wheel drive. So yeah, pretty sweet ride. That's 2004. I mean, my only real issue with the Fiat Jeeps is that, I'd say the Wranglers in particular, is that they're so ridiculously expensive. It's kind of like, it just ruins, like, a Wrangler should be something you can afford when you're in your early 20s, and you shouldn't have to be a software engineer or just have rich parents. It should be something anyone could afford if they want to get behind the wheel of one, and they shouldn't have to buy one that's 30 or 40 years old, although those are the true Jeeps. All right, guys, and actually inspecting it, there was a few other things I needed to take care of. One of the things was the front wiper blades. So what's interesting is that these blades right here, I guess basically the base, I'm not sure what this part's called, but the non-blade part, this was actually off of the previous wiper blades, because the replacements, while the wipers, while the rubber, the blade is the right length, this pin didn't actually fit through the replacement wiper. So I basically put these, so I used the old wiper housing and put the new blades in, and it more or less fit and worked. Also had to do a little bit with the lights, so I had to replace this headlight, because believe it or not, the one that was in there is actually defective. It didn't have the reflector on it, and ironically, I hadn't noticed. I noticed something was wrong when it was sitting, and one of them was off color, so I got a replacement headlight. And then also in that process, I put new sockets on. Where we go? And actually, the nice thing was I made sure I got sockets that had the same type of pins. So because the old pins were still good, I just cleaned them up a little bit, and I popped the pins that came with the socket off, and then popped those in. So that was a nice. The old ones definitely were worn out, needed to be replaced. I had to replace the light socket here. That was getting pretty funky. And then this, unfortunately, there was some sort of an issue where the fog light was intermittent, because the old one was actually it was pretty corroded, because the lens itself was cracked. And to make matters worse, when I took it off and I was kind of playing around with it, I dropped it anyway. So at that point, the point was moot. Now what it had on it was Delta, and these are not the factory originals, I don't believe, but I was able to go directly to Delta lights and get just the lens and the reflector, and I was able to take this bezel off of the previous one and clean it up. It looks practically new, so I should be able to pop the replacement lens and reflector. It also has the socket on the back of it, like right in there, and it should be a pretty much direct replacement, and at that point the Jeep will be pretty much done. One other little tidbit that you might find useful, I actually put the rear track bar back on, but the original bolts, which actually had T55 Torx heads in them, just huge pains in the ass. So I actually replaced the bolts with the ones that are correct threads. I reused the flange nuts on the other side. They're kind of unique. But with this, I just got, you know, the metric equivalent of grade 8, which is like 10.9 bolts, that actually, you know, were a direct replacement size and thread-wise. I'm trying to remember, I think they're M12. By Jeep people, I think they just get rid of the rear track bar on these YJs because, believe it or not, it's not really necessary. So the track bar is actually redundant, and the only reason they installed it was for marketing purposes, you know, because basically it was a safety feature. And this is coming on the heels of the CJ, which I think it was like a 2020 or 60 Minutes report. It was like this big deal in like the mid 80s about CJs flipping over, which kind of like really damaged the reputation of the CJ. So when they came out with the YJ, they widened the stance, they widened the track, and they put this rear track bar on there literally for marketing purposes, to talk about how safe it was. It actually, with the leaf springs, it doesn't really do anything. But in my case, mine's in good shape. The bolts one of them was in great shape, the other one was crap. And actually, just to get them loose, because they had kind of like rusted to the sleeves inside the bushings, I had to whack them out with an air hammer. I mean, I guess I could have heated them up, but I was worried about damaging the bushing, so I was able to pop them out with an air hammer. But anyway, I decided just to replace both bolts with a regular hex head, which will be a lot easier in the future. And as you can see, I used some of that anti-seize on it, you know, just for a little extra protection or a little extra insurance. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next video.